I'm Paul.
I'm Todd. Game on.
All right. All right. So it went a little crooked there, but we're good to go.
Yeah,
So
we'll roll with it, Paul. This is episode
always,
1, right?
yeah. Well, live and learn. So Todd, what are we doing here?
I think we're going to talk about two of our favorite topics and how they come together, right? Topic
Yeah, man.
one is a lot of your world. Topic two is a lot of my world, and we're going to put this sandwich together.
You know what's funny? I was actually thinking about that the other day because look, ultimately we talk about engagement and learnings and management style and all kinds of aspects where gaming has obviously had a strong impact on individuals and potentially on business models too, although that may be up to us to establish it. But the other side of it that really occurs to me is, B2B, B2C, it's still made up of the people regardless. And I guarantee if you take it all in all, yeah, actually I would. Diablo 4. All in all, um, they they're gamers or they have been gamers at some point in life. Like when you're doing your stuff, right? Because you're so immersed, you're a leader in the gaming world. Do you find that people are like older people, meaning starting in their, let's call it their 40s, just do you find that they're still actively gaming or they kind of said, as a kid, I learned some things, but time to put those things aside? I don't know. What do you
I
think?
think the gaming habits changed a little bit. First of all, shout out to Bob for that old school War Games reference. I like that. We would definitely like to play some games with this community, Bob. And yeah, Paul. So, the data says a third of the gamers are over 50. And I think what we see is there's a group of hardcore gamers that stay kind of playing core games forever, often generationally. They grew up with games. Now they're playing with their kid, like I did. And, but these days, everybody does game. I mean, people count different things as games, but everyone is playing Wordle or Candy Crush. And those are games. The mechanics that went into the game design there and how they think about engagement is what we're going to explore, I think, on this series, right? Is how can people apply what works in games to other businesses where they may not have thought that was the
Well,
case.
to your point, if you go on an airplane, and now that I'm I'm 75, I always make it a point that even if I have to pay extra to pay for business class, just because I'm too old to handle anything else.
You deserve it.
So, but if I look around everybody in business class, let's say there are 16 seats, 13 of them are playing a mobile game of some kind. The other two may be working and one may be watching a movie, but they're playing something on a phone or on an iPad, and then pretty much doing that regardless of the length of the flight, almost the entire flight, which astounds me. First, it astounds me that anyone that old can concentrate that long. And secondly, it astounds me that it's fine. I mean, not a problem. They don't care what anyone thinks about it. They just do it.
It's private enough. You're there in the comfort of your cabin, But it does speak to the accessibility of gaming. When you and I were growing up, I don't know what was your first gaming. I know it did not fit in your pocket. I know it was not inexpensive. I know it was not lightweight. So, what was your first gaming piece of hardware?
Oh, see, when I was a kid, I didn't have gaming pieces of hardware, right? The gaming piece of hardware was literally, a toy cat pistol, right? That was a gaming piece of hardware. But when it got to the world of computing, I was always a PC guy. I tried to use different consoles, like I used the PS2. I used oh, you know what I had? What was that one that Sega put out? The
Dreamcast.
Dream.
Yeah,
I
Dreamcast.
had that. I tried using that. Didn't like it. You know why? I literally have no dexterity. I mean, my niece, who is one of the apple of my eye niece, Sarah, who's now married, in her early 40s. When she was 15, she was kicking my butt in games on, I think it was like Nintendo 64 or something like that, with the basketball games. And she just slaughtered me. For some reason, I know it was the era that Tim Burton started getting popular. I have no idea why I associate it that way, but I do.
Well, like you, primarily a PC gamer for me, but did have some other devices. The Magnavox Odyssey 2 was
Oh
my
my
first
God.
gaming machine. So my dad brought it home, connected to the massive CRT, and yes, Elaine Benfield, it was Pong, and it was so old school that when I scored on Paul, there was not enough computing power to have scoring on the screen, not even a little tick mark. So after I scored, the device had little pegs, so you would keep score on the physical device. So anyway, we've come a long way.
Wait. You like an actual physical peg that you plug into a hole?
Yeah, that's right. It was the next generation. The next gen had digital scoring on the screen when they figured that out.
Jesus.
So yeah, to your point, these days everyone's on a phone, they're gaming, they've got a powerful
Are you
device.
still an avid PC gamer?
I wouldn't say I'm avid. I say I used to play games all the time. Then I made games. Now I mostly talk about games, Paul. That's why we're together. You know, I wish I had more time to game. I'm probably going to get in some time with the new Battlefield 6. I do like combat team-based games. I play more on the mobile device because they're designed for small little bits of time. But yes, Bob, very, very old school, as old school as you can get. Pong and Infocom text adventure games on the old PC. Zork, these adventure, old school.
I can't remember the name of it. It was like there was one text-based game I used to like, but they used to drive me a little crazy because the branching and the trees were so fixed, and you'd get frustrated because you'd say something, you'd write something, and it would had enough intelligence at least to pick a branch based on your answer, and it would be exactly the answer you weren't expecting to hear in any way, shape, or form because it had nothing to do with what you were actually writing, and it would drive me up a wall, actually, like completely up a wall. And I learned that, but the one thing I did learn from that, which was that the underlying technology, meaning the simple, and or technology that was being used there, or if and or technology that was being used there was not going to be workable, and because it was too rigid. And it got to the point then where I started getting much more serious about PC and video gaming was when, interesting, I got interested in Doom, but Doom was so bloody and I would get killed so often that I just didn't want to play it. Then I got the one game, though, that captured me, even though it was still equally as bloody and I got killed equally as often, was Wolfenstein. I really liked that game. I guess because it was a bit more of a storyline than Doom 2 to it. Doom was just like go in and slaughter everything, where this was, well, okay, there's Nazis and you got to kill the Nazis, and and they're neo-Nazis, and that was great. And I'm Jewish besides, so it was working for me, and it was not that far after World War II.
And glorious
by that time, right? So, and then I had my first insight ever into gaming, right? That has served me incredibly well, and goes to a point I've heard you make a lot, which was, this was a world where John Carmack, who I didn't know of at the time, other than he created these games. So here's what I remembered this. Sony got hacked. Some Sony game got hacked. I don't remember what it was. And they had this community. And the people who hacked it were permabanned from the community immediately. And Sony threatened people who would hack a game with legal action, and absolutely would automatically permaban them without any recourse, right? And Carmack got hacked. I think it was Wolfenstein or Doom. I think it was Doom that got hacked first. Yeah. And he said, oh, wow, that's great. They're actually taking this as a platform, and they're building out the things that they're building the game they want to play. I like that. The only thing I'll ask of people is take the freemium model, but but if you wanted to use the platform, pay a minimum fee for the game. You can still play the more advanced game. It'll have extra levels. It'll do all this other stuff. But then you can hack it any way you want. And to me, that transformed everything. I mean, and that kind of goes to all contemporary gaming, the modding and the changes. So
it really does. I think we've got this queued up for a future episode, but you're definitely hitting a passion point, which is this idea of user-generated content and tools, which I give a lot of credit to id Software and Doom and Wolfenstein, and people would make these modifications and totally change the skin and look of the game. I remember this pretty gory first-person 3D shooter. Someone made a mod that was characters from Barney, the kids show, right? Like, that's kind of not two things you would put together, but of course, everything exists on the internet, and that
traumatized an entire generation.
But also
seeing Barney go down in blood.
But probably birthed a generation of game designers too, because what I've always found super powerful, and it was my own story, is when you have the experience of taking a product and making just a small tweak and something new is now manifested in the world, it's super powerful that you can be a creator. And those old school games of Doom unlocked that for a lot of people. So seriously, that Barney mod, those other early mods, Minecraft later, they created a entire generation of game designers.
So it looks like Chanel was happy about the blood. She's happy about all the blood. I agree with. To me, that specific thing, and this is our future is going to be like this, which is, and our entire show really is based on how people engage now and the new business models. I mean, this is. If it weren't for modding, none of this would even be a conversation.
That's right. Well, and as James points out, so Counter-Strike, one of the biggest games in the world, was a user mod of another title, based on the Half-Life engine from Valve. Same with the game Dota, which now has, Dota 2 and launched into League of Legends. That was originally a mod of Warcraft. So some of these most massive games started as community mods and birthed entire genres. Really.
Okay, so let me ask you this question, because this is something I don't know the answer to, and I've always kind of wondered, and you are literally the person who can answer it for me. So you have, let's take Dota 2, okay, and these are people created by a mod. Then it becomes a game. I mean, not a game, a mega hit. What do they get? What do the kids get from it? The ones who actually, I don't know if they were kids, but the ones who did the modding get from it. How's that work now?
A lot of those designers, it was their path into the game industry as professional game designers. Certainly in the case of the Dota creator, and to James Fudge's point, the Counter-Strike creator, those properties eventually were adopted by developers that could afford to put in all the commercial support behind it, and it resulted in game design jobs for them. One thing that is super interesting though is in the world of game design, you cannot IP protect a mechanic, the rules of the game. You can of course trademark the title, you could copyright the design of the main character, of Duke Nukem or Wolfenstein, but the idea of, a third person game or of a particular game mechanic, that it goes into the world, and other people tend to build off that and come up with their own thing, for good or bad. That's why you see a lot of derivative games out there on the mobile platform. When something works, like Match 3, you might see 1,000 different branded Match 3s. So so it makes the industry very innovative, but you can't protect that it's more a path to game jobs for folks.
So effectively, from a revenue standpoint, you're going to make the revenue on what you built. You're not going to make it on trademarking or patenting mechanic of any kind, because you can't.
That's right. It's hard to hide in the game industry. Ultimately you have engagement or you don't. With the free-to-play model, that there's good versions and bad versions, but people either like the game enough to stick around or not. They like an item enough to pay for the downloadable content or the virtual hat, or they don't. So it's interesting in terms of the kind of the consumer feedback that you're getting. Which, by the way, Paul, that does kind of bring me to a point. I wanted to make sure, with each episode, like we talked about, we're given a nice crunchy takeaway for the audience. So there was something that I mentioned before the show I wanted to bring up around the importance of customer feedback, right? Want me to just dive into it?
Yeah, go for it.
Cool. Well, I think we're exploring this intersection between product and customer and how you get engagement. Because most people, B2C or B2B, they're looking for engaged customers. And it just hit me that one of the lessons that I learned super early in my career, that I learned outside the game industry, took to the game industry, and now apply, is just the very basic idea of putting your product in the hands of the end consumer as early and often as possible. And I want to give you a non-gaming example, and then also I'd love to hear any examples or thoughts that you have. But when I started my career and I was making software for this ginormous company called NCR, made cash registers. NCR, National Cash Register, used to be one of the oldest companies out there. People don't know that the company IBM was a spin-off of NCR. A lot of tradition. And when I was there were 60,000 people, and it was and still is a great company. I learned so many things about leadership there and about product development. So learned a ton. But we were so big that the product that I was building in my 7 years there, I never really, as an engineer deep in my little hidey hole, I never got to talk with the end customer that I was building the product for. And that's not that surprising. There were analysts for that, and the requirements came to me through all those different people, right? And when I left a big company, NCR, never having talking to the customer, really understanding who I was serving, and went to a tiny company, Radiant Systems, that a lot of folks listening from Atlanta and beyond will know. We were doing the same thing. We were making point of sale, but it was so much a part of the DNA of that company to put the product in the hands of the end user and make sure every engineer knew that not only in my first week was I talking to customers, I was working in the environment. So we made point of sales for convenience stores. And Paul, in the first week, I went to a convenience store where our product was there, the cash register. And all day long, I used the cash register with no training to serve real customers. Now, and the manager was right here and he was correcting me, and, I made mistakes. But I mean, talk about like being thrust into the world of your customer and using the product and, selling cigarettes and doing pay at the pump. And none of this has anything to do with gaming, but I took those lessons and applied them later in gaming. I just thought it was a study in contrast around a company that just totally embraces, like, every person there really needs to know what's going through the customer's mind. And I know you've spent decades thinking about customer engagement, but I don't know. What are your
you're absolutely no. Look, ultimately, one of the biggest things that, let's say, the people who got it in the B2B world, and there were a lot of them, I have to say, early on understood the idea of collaboration with your customer, period. And it was called, there were a large number of programs associated with it. The problem with a lot of them was that the amount of hoops you had to go through just to be part of it was enormous. It wasn't like, hi, all customers, come on in. It was highly select group of customers who are willing to invest in the product as much, in addition to us, who, as a result of this, will get the product for a reduced price when it's produced. Come on in, right? So it was highly structured, very bureaucratic, and difficult to be part of. Now, that said, it's not like there were no companies that didn't think of the idea of early engagement, and a lot of them, some of the approaches that B2B took tend to be a freemium model of some kind, which was kind of B2B to C-ish, I'll call it, meaning we'll give you this for a while, free, you like it after a while, you buy it. Sometimes, but the tricky part was there was always a hook in that, was basically to get you addicted. That was the purpose of it. Wasn't to get real feedback, although some of the companies were smart and did that, got actual feedback, but it was also to get you hooked to it, so that you had to buy it at a certain point, because you're using it all the time, because you've been using it for free for 2 or 3 years, and all of a sudden it wasn't so cheap, right? So which, again, I get it, but was not optimal. Now, that said, to your point, I'm obviously an avid gamer. I'm like diehard gamer, right? Diablo 4 is my game, and I put in, I'm going to admit this too publicly, since the Diablo 4 came out, which is 2023, I think, I put in just under 1,000 hours, which is a lot of time. Okay, so and I play it on my console. I play it on a Lenovo Go S. I played it on a Steam Deck. I played it on a PC. I built a PC. In part, the guide for building it was making sure it could handle the highest settings of Diablo 4, meaning it was a real heavy-duty PC, right? So I get that. And the thing that's fascinating to me, and I want to get into scale a little bit here too, is the gaming industry has been better about, hi, you join the beta, even though it's restrictive there too, or free to play, right? Where they want you to really buy the DLC, all the additional content that they can sell you. Ultimately, they're selling you something either way. But one of the problems, I think, is if you look at the size of the gaming industry and the scope of the gaming industry, and I'd like you to describe that in a minute, you're dealing with a huge actual set of organized communities around it. Like Reddit has an enormous gaming community on it, and there's a lot of bitching and moaning going on nonstop, and it kind of discourages the game companies from wanting to give them stuff. Why? Because all they do is bitch and moan about what they're not getting, and they don't. And I don't think, because 80% of the gamers are not my age, 90% of the gamers are not my age. They think that what they want is the most important thing in the world, and they don't understand why a gaming company won't build to it, and they don't realize how difficult it is and all the math involved in building these games. They're hard, and take scope into account. And what I think good way to set the stage too is given the scope, talk about the scope and size of this whole industry too, because that impacts all of this stuff.
Yeah. Okay. You had so much packed in there. So let me hit them piece by piece. That was good. So as you mentioned, and anyone who follows me on LinkedIn knows I talk about this a lot, right? So gaming is very big. It's the biggest entertainment industry by far. It's $200 billion and 3.2 billion gamers on planet Earth. And to put it in perspective, you take all of box office film and all of music, and you put them together times 2, and the gaming industry is larger. So it's very, very big in scale, Paul, to your point. It's the largest entertainment industry, which means that's a lot of data points and a lot of diverse industries. The next point, I'll get to your bitching Reddit comment, but I think, I want to talk a little bit about just how we take for granted that you can collect this feedback digitally in the gaming industry. And, rather than the difficulty with physical goods of, say, with this point of sale product, okay, I've got to put it in a convenience store. I've got to sit down. I've got to watch people use the product. We have to give a lot of credit to the platform Steam, which I know you're a user of. And everyone just takes that for granted now, that I can download a game digitally. But Steam was, of course, super early to do that. And when we, as a developer at Hi-Rez, were thinking, do we go through a retail store and do a box product? Or do we try to design for this new world of digital distribution? The fact that Steam existed was a benefit. And it was not an obvious choice at the time. People, if anyone, I don't know if anyone in chat is old enough to remember when Steam was called a virus, but it was not optimized in the early days. It was always there in the background, and us gamers are a little skeptical about something that's sitting there. And so there was a lot of skepticism, even at our own team level, about distributing using this digital platform instead of a box. But the fact that we could distribute our game digitally meant a few things. It meant, one, we had a direct relationship with the customer, like a direct relationship, no middle people. And it also meant that when they didn't like something and our data showed it was a legitimate thing that need to be fixed, you can actually send out the update. Like, this just really revolutionized the idea of a product customer feedback cycle. You're not talking about 6 years or 6 months to get a good idea implemented. You're talking about 6 weeks or maybe 6 days or maybe 6 hours. I mean, the speed in which you can turn around an item and get it back out, whether that's a critical bug or a new feature or a design problem where this character was a little too overpowered out of the box despite our testing. So that digital distribution meant instant feedback, instant ability to act. And honestly, it's still something I get super passionate, because whether you're a game developer or an app developer or an enterprise software developer, I still feel like collectively we're not taking advantage of the magic of getting feedback from our customer digitally and being able to turn that around pretty quickly and iterating fast. And that's what I'd say the leaders in the game company, the games that are doing well today versus maybe the studios that are not, are the ones that have really leaned into a fast, iterative product cycle that involve the community. Your final point, then I'll turn it back, is like, how do you give up? It's also an art and a science on acting on this community feedback, because you can't just listen to the 10% that only bitch on Reddit and X and other platforms. They're loud, but that's not necessarily signal, that you should just take and adopt. So that's a challenge.
Well, actually, to that point, the reality is, if they constantly bitch, just go play another game. No one's making you play the game, right? I mean, that's the way I look at it. I always, it's driven me up a wall when I see these. I mean, they're kids, and I realize that, but the tendency, since I'm active, is I tend to think I'm dealing with peers, and I realize I'm dealing with people whose brains aren't even completely formed yet, right?
Your thousands of hours, I got to say, your thousands of hours in Diablo make me chuckle, because oftentimes on Steam we would see, someone that was like, this latest patch, it completely ruined it, and after my 2,000 hours, I'm going to uninstall. It's like,
I know. That's not. Look, I mean, as you know, because of and this is going to go, I think there's a big future show in this particular thing. So you have these serious, like, each game has influencers that are they actually have big voices within that community, and they're big voices. Like, there's this Diablo 4 has, this kid from, I think he's from Korea or something. His name is Makuna. His handle is Makuna, and he builds these meta builds. And this other guy, German guy, Rob 2628, and he builds meta builds, and they're constantly streaming on Twitch and YouTube and so on, and with a lot, and they're advisors, and they deal with a lot of the platforms like Mobilytics and these others that provide you with the bills and make money there. That's how they make money, by providing you effectively with ways to guide you through games and so on. And the thing that's fascinating, and I think there's a real applicability in B2B here, is that on the one hand, is the external communities like that. And then on the other hand, you look at, say, example, and this is another future show, but Steam and Valve, Valve and Steam. And Steam has effectively Steam-driven communities associated with Steam and the games themselves. And to your point, it's a centralized platform where updates are pretty much automatic. As soon as it's in fact, in my last and guaranteed last business book ever, so I have no intention of writing another one. Commonwealth Self-Interest, Steam is the platform I talk about, and I derive lessons from Steam for the B2B community. They can't replicate it, but they can learn from 10, 15 different things that Steam does that are absolutely applicable to B2B. So you're dealing on the one hand with these external communities like the Reddit-based communities, and then internal communities which are associated with the game itself via Steam and so on and so forth. Oh, we're going further than 10, man. We're going to go way beyond that. We have so many things to talk about and guests to bring on stuff. So, but the fascinating thing to me is, look, there are the community part of this thing, to your point, get constant feedback and community participation. Like, for example, some of the big enterprise tech companies have really actually organized communities. Like SAP, to their credit, has always had some very large, multi-million sized communities. They had a developers community. For some reason, the name is escaping. Oh, SDN. It was called SDN, SAP Developers Network. That had like 8 million people on it. And it was a constant process of feedback. When Sugar CRM was founded all the way back in 2004, they immediately created, because they were open source, and the first open source kind of, B2B technology that became popular anyway. When they founded it, it was open source. They had on SourceForge, they had SugarForge, which was an external community, but it was a community of what was ultimately 300,000 developers who were adding to the product. And it was there was a free version of the product and a paid version. And there was a firewall between the free and the paid. And the developers would give feedback. They would get their stuff incorporated into free. It was tested via the free version. And then it was, posted to the paid version as a permanent feature, if it worked out. And then there was some benefit to the community itself, the individuals who developed it. So they had the mechanism. So these mechanisms have existed in the B2B community. It's just that the problem is, because of the scale of enterprise companies, to your point about NCR, really, that hasn't changed much. And overall, there's so much legal, obstacle in the way of all of this that it makes it very difficult. And I think one of the things we can, you and I can evangelize for these things, is to start opening this up a bit, inside these companies, because it will. The irony is, when they do it right, it always benefits them. I doubt if anybody who's watching today can show me a case where they opened it up and it became a total disaster, or it just didn't work, please do, because I'd like to know it, because the only ones I know of actually succeed. HubSpot, had an absolutely hyperactive community built around it and did very well. And then when time started they got bigger and bigger, all of a sudden, Salesforce, same way. I mean, Salesforce has extraordinary engagement with its community, but there's a lot of obstacles that get thrown in the way by Salesforce legal that restrict the community. That said, Salesforce also knows how to celebrate the community, and this is an idea I think even gave me. I don't know. Are you an America's Got Talent fan at all?
I am. I love the golden buzzer. Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's where we're going. Exactly. I love that. You can tell, for example, when you watch that show, because I'm like you, I love that show. It's one of my favorite shows of all time. And Simon Cowell's turned into a nice man. Right, finally, he's turned into a nice man. When you watch the golden buzzer being hit, and it really, really means something to the people who get it. It's like it really is a genuinely life-changing event for them, given what they're trying to do.
It's
Even if they don't win,
yeah,
they will
no,
go
yeah. So
now.
I can binge. I can spend a nice Saturday just YouTube algorithm or
I do
Facebook
that all the
algorithm, just
time.
golden buzzer to golden buzzer, and it not to get too far off, but it
No.
is fairly gamified. At the end of the day, they certainly, when you're looking at the edited clip, there's a narrative there that is compelling, that makes
Yep.
you feel connection and meaning. That janitor that sings that Journey song,
Yep.
and how he's just kind of living a low-key life, and then he's
Pushing
in the
the broom.
spotlight, and then it's a rare item. It leans into our psychological need for status, and these are very rare. It's gamified. They've only got so many of golden buzzers. Are they going to push it? And then it's at this point, it's not surprise and delight, but let's just call it shinies. In gaming, we call it shiny. What's the sound? What's the animation? What makes me feel good on all of my senses? We're not there with smell yet. That when something exciting happens, they literally have shinies, the confetti.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, actually, don't forget the other point, which goes right to the heart of our entire show, which is the audience engagement around the golden buzzer, especially on BGT, even more than AGT, on the Britain's Got Talent, where they are standing up there and starting to chant, hit that gold, hit that gold.
Right.
And it's thousands of people on their feet doing this.
Yeah.
And it's not prompted. The audience is there, and there's some teleprompting going on somewhere, but not there. Right. And then it's interesting to watch the judges, but the judges are pros, and they're engaging all the time, figuring out what's going to drive the audience even crazier and better.
100%. Back to the product and the audience, like you said, they know talent, but they're getting real-time feedback from their audience for this media product, that this thing has got a little bit of the magic, a little bit of the secret sauce, whatever it is, the story, the performance, the combination is resonating, and we push it. And they're testing their product. If they were doing that in a studio environment with no live audience and not getting that signal, probably some of those people, to your point, they might have gotten yes votes. Some of them might not, honestly. Some of them are different enough. But because they're getting the real-time feedback. Yeah.
Well, to your point on that, and then I'll go into the Salesforce analogy, but to your point on that, there are times when someone gets a golden buzzer, they're getting it not for their performance, but for their story. And that's really the reason. Like I saw something last night on BGT that is definitely for that reason. Right. So, and again, to me, that show is a work of genius because of that. And Simon Cowell is just a master, man. That guy, he blows me away with how brilliant he really is. Right. So, but where it applies is Salesforce has almost all those have consciously. Look, they've messed up some things recently, but generally they still pull this off. First, they have what they call their trailblazers, and there's a story behind every one of them. And the trailblazers get jackets, and they get rewarded, and they get their story told. And there are people who have stood out in Salesforce implementations and Salesforce, something related to Salesforce, they stand out. But then they have what they call the golden hoodie, which is literally the same process, but there's a hoodie. Exactly. The golden hoodie. And here's the deal. So here's a true story. So how much that means to them, it's exactly the same as AGT. We were told, Brent and I were actually told this story. I believe it was Brent and I were on the same call. And I want to say it was Kathleen Obata who told us the story, but I might not be right. So here was the story. So somebody was going to get, they had chosen somebody to get the golden hoodie, and they were going to announce it. And then there's a big deal, and they give you a golden hoodie. It's actually a nice golden hoodie. And here's what happened. So somebody on the call with this person who was going to get it, who did not know, inadvertently mentioned that they were going to get it. And on the call, this person started to cry, right on the call, because they were so happy and excited and moved and touched by the fact they were going to be the recipient of a gold. Same thing, maybe a little less vociferous, than you see on the stage, grandpa's not coming out and hugging you, but it's a same kind of thing. It's emotional. The emotional power is enormous. And that's an area where gaming does get it and B2B does not get it. And
they're celebrating a community member, right? And again, I think I take your point. Big companies maybe by definition they become a little more risk averse.
No, they don't have to.
Regardless of industry, there's more lawyers involved. But this idea of feedback from your community and celebrating your community members, again, future episode number 11. At some point, we'll dive into esports. It's literally taking players of your game, your users who are exceptional. They happen to be exceptional, being skilled at playing your game, putting them on the literal stage, putting confetti, that version of the golden hoodie, lifting a trophy. So, yes, jot it down, Players Production. We got a lot of content ahead. But yes, celebrate, shine the spotlight on your users. And I think the best companies can take lessons, from gaming and esports and apply them no matter what the size of their community.
So here's the difficulty you and I are going to run into with this is every company I know will give lip service to exactly what you just said. So of course we shine the spotlight on our users and then they don't do it. Right. So we're going to have to show them by examples.
You pointed out some best in class, we've got the entertainment example of the golden buzzer. We've got a gaming example of someone holding an esports trophy at a major production. You've got your golden hoodie example, right? So we've got some aspirational case studies to call people out and see what they're doing. So.
All right. So listen, we don't have a ton of time left. So why don't we talk about just what we plan for the future of the show a little bit so people know that it's not only going to be you and me all the time.
No, I think we enjoy this topic, the intersection of customer engagement and business world with the video game industry and things that the video game industry has learned. And so, Paul, this is our call, our invitation for people from your network and my network that are interested in exploring this with us, right? So anybody out there that has learned valuable lessons from gaming, might be life lessons, might be business lessons. Maybe you're just a big, somewhat closeted gamer and you never thought about it. And you want to come out here. This is a safe space for you guys. You're among gamers. We're going to explore this together. So that's what we're going to do, right? We'll pick a topic. We'll have guests and have a lot of fun.
And so here's the deal, guys. So on LinkedIn, we'll put it on the PPN profile and then we can repost it to all our other ones. We're going to put out a call. It's a call to gamers. Now, you got to be B2B to start, and you got to admit two things. You got to admit one thing and tell us another thing. What you have to admit is that you're a gamer and you tell us your favorite game. You're currently a gamer. And the second thing is, okay, what are a lesson if you were a gamer in the past and even now, what are the lessons that you've learned from gaming that's actually had value to you over your career, right? And if you'd like to, how it would be, Rob Pinkerton, there's the man. Rob Pinkerton is the EVP of marketing for Oracle CX. He's pretty awesome and is a gamer and has one of my favorite classic quotes of all time. He said, the thing he likes about AI is you can yell at it.
All right, let's chop it up.
Rob.
Let's chop it up, Rob.
That's Rob, man. So anyway, that's going out on LinkedIn, and at least one of you will become a guest at some point on the show. All right. And so that means something in management learn, something where you've seen it engage customers, something that you've learned from gaming, but that you are a gamer and that you play something. And you have to tell us if it's not your obsessive game like me and Diablo, it's the game you like a lot. I'll put it that way. And don't tell me you play with your kids. I don't want that, because I hear that one all the time. That's just an excuse. Okay. So forget your kids here.
Yeah. I mean, It's valid, but
It's valid, but it's not fair. Not for what we want. We want to know that you would play a game even if you didn't have kids.
I agree with that.
All
I
right.
agree with that.
Even if you didn't have kids.
If you're dragging, it's more if you're dragging your kid. Like I dragged my kid into my
so you can say that, right?
Yeah. Now then he likes it, but all right,
sir. So I am so happy about this. I have to say, I'm glad we have show number 1. So the next show will be what is this, August? So our next show will be the third Tuesday in September, whatever the hell that is. I have no clue.
It's a busy time. Fall is a busy time for gaming. You know, many of the folks out there are on their way to Germany for Gamescom, which is a massive convention. I don't know. Have you been there? You probably haven't been there.
No, I have never been to a gaming conference, and I kind of want to.
And we have a show anniversary, moment, and we want to do it from Cologne Gamescom.
I'm in. Are you kidding?
300,000 gamers, Paul.
I would go.
Massive. A ton of business. So well, that's something to aspire.
And Cologne's a cool town, man. I like it for the history.
Great.
The history is beautiful in that place.
It is.
I
have a love lock on the bridge. If any of you are there, look for there's about 5 million locks, but look for Todd and Minnie. It's a little
Minnie,
my wife. M-I-N-I.
Your wife is Minnie?
Yeah, she's a Minnie. I mean, both in stature, and that's her name.
Really?
So,
my wife's very short too.
Yeah. Cool. All right. We didn't really practice an outro, but
we don't need one today. We'll do another one. We'll come up with one if you guys got suggestions for one, just an outro. Other than that, we'll just go to the outro.
Yeah, that was Paul. This is Todd. That game on.
See ya.
This has been a Players Productions Network digital broadcast.